Good morning. Welcome back. This is part 3 of a video series on this mosaic titled I Heard the Mountains Sing. I talked in part 2 about breaking some rules, and lest I get a reputation for telling people to break rules, I wanted to clarify and elaborate on that. The 3 rules I'm going to talk about are: number 1, avoid triangles; number 2, employ a method called Pseudopiomento, which is related to number 1 because it is a method that will aid you in avoiding triangles; and number 3, don't use whole pieces of tile, vitreous, smalty, etc. Okay, triangles. I think triangles have a very, let's say, bad reputation. Some people just kind of categorically say avoid triangles. I don't agree with that. For one thing, I think triangles, if they're not cut precisely and in stone and marble, or stone and smalty, it can be very difficult to cut a precise triangle to fit a precise triangle shape. And it can stand out for that reason. You don't want a piece to stand out and call attention to itself. Another reason is they are misused, I think, or overused, especially in beginner work. Beginner stained glass work, I often see an overuse and which is maybe automatically a misuse of triangles. I think the appeal in stained glass is that it's easy to cut a lot of triangles quickly, and they're easy to fit together. So that the temptation is to use them to fill in a background or to fill in a space. And this isn't always very attractive, and the hazard is that unintentional patterns can be created within the triangle background. Grout lines, for example, that you really wouldn't want there, but they stand out because it's a deviation. Or sub patterns, sub shapes form in a particular grouping of triangles. So triangles do have a bad reputation, and some of it is well earned. But I would not say categorically triangles are bad. In this mosaic, I am breaking the rule, and I'm using a lot of triangles. That is because I'm using a grinder, and I can shape pieces that I couldn't cut. We're going to look at this area here, this gray area, and you see it starts out very narrow, and it does flare out. So I'm using this material, and I started here, and then I came in with the bottom line. Well, then I'm left with this difficult space and very difficult triangles to cut in stone. Especially these are 2 marbles here, and were difficult to work with. So then I got that one in. Well, then I'm left with this space. And I got that one in, and then I'm left with this space. Well, that's a lot of triangles, but I don't think they stand out. And I think it's actually kind of interesting the way it supports the space, that flaring out. But I couldn't achieve that with hand tools. I couldn't cut those, and I would have to use another method like Pseudopiomento. I am not using Pseudopiomento on this, and that means I must cut triangles. Here's another example. Because it's all flaring, it's not a grid background or a linear background, there's just a lot of flaring here. If I don't use Pseudopiomento, I'm going to have to cut triangles. But these are nice triangles. I don't think they stand out. I think they support the flow of the space. And because they're cut so precisely, I think they add visual interest, that they actually look nice. So that's 2 kind of rules I'm breaking. 2 related rules, I guess. A quick review of Pseudopiomento. This piece here I finished last year. This is more traditional classical cutting and laying technique to support the movement, the andamento. I do not have triangles, and I did use Sedopio Mento to achieve that. For example, if you'll recall over here, we're kind of starting with a base piece that is, it varies in width, but they're the same length, let's say, the same height. So over here, we're controlling it a lot more. We're controlling the width of the pieces. So I come in here, let's say, I've got this narrow, these two lines here that I really want to take and then fill in this area. So I can increase the width of the pieces a little bit until I can get 2 from the 1. That's Sedopio Mento. Actually 1 into 2, I believe. Here's another one. Well, I can get started there, but I need to start flaring some more. So instead of a little triangle wedge here, I've got 1 into 2, 1 into 2, and 1 into 2. Here's 1 into 3, actually. That's a big B cut of Smalties. So this is a really beautiful way to achieve a similar thing that I'm working on the other piece without using the triangles. I only used hand tools on this piece, so I wasn't going to get the beautiful triangle cuts that would have been necessary to achieve this without using Sedopio Mento. And I just really wanted to do this in this more classical, traditional cutting and laying technique. And I think it was appropriate. It's kind of a background space that I'm filling. I'm just using it to support the flow of the piece, the andamento. So it was appropriate for this piece to follow those rules. This piece is different. I've got sections, or layers as I call them. Pattern is important in this mosaic. So I'm changing the cuts and the cutting and laying in order to get changes in pattern. And Sedopio Mento would have been, it just didn't make as much sense. So, and I could cut the triangles. I could cut to fit particular spaces and still have it look nice and not have anything clunky or stand out. So I broke those 2 rules. The third rule about whole pieces, I've done some large mosaics and commissions where I used whole pieces. I did a very large cross mosaic, like 6 by 7 or 7 by 8 feet, and the background is mostly whole vitreous. It started out narrower in the center, it kind of radiates out from the center of the cross. But I think they did a fine job at the time constraints of the commission, required that, and the cost restraints as well. So it was okay. I've done large mosaics and small mosaics where I've used whole pieces of Smaltie. I think it kind of depends on how you use them. In this case, I'm using kind of whole pieces of marble that are cut similarly to Smaltie, although Smaltie is hand cut and has a little more variance to it, so it's not so rigid looking. But these are cut and trimmed in a way to make, I think, that they don't look clunky. It offers a different pattern, which is really what I need to do. Likewise up here, I'm getting up into some whole pieces of marble, but they have to be cut, trimmed, and shaped on the ends, and even a little wedging there to make that work. And I think it's perfectly okay. In this piece, there's no whole Smaltie in that, and that's appropriate. This one is different. So the rules are, yes, the rules are made to be broken, we say. It's good to understand the rules and know when those rules are appropriate to be followed and maybe when they're not. And in this piece, I don't think they're appropriate to be followed, and I'm consistently not following those rules in this piece. And that's why. Well, I hope this has been helpful. It's time to get back to work. So until next time, ciao.